Welcome to the April meeting of the Sustainability, Housing Efficiency, and Neighborhood Subcommittee. It's a big meeting for this committee and a big month as well, since we are marking Earth Day this month, Fair Housing Month, and other months that are very notable for the areas that we cover in this subcommittee. We'll begin with the approval of the meeting minutes.
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are joined by Councilman Jim Waring on the phone. We are going to take an item out of order today because we have a guest visiting us, several guests, but one visiting us from the Arizona State Senate, and we want her to be able to get back to work. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Councilwoman Stark to introduce agenda item number 8.
Thank you. Number 8 is our Chief Service Officer Volunteer Impact Report. And today we have Senator Kate Brophy-McGee with us, she and Jeannie Ann Summer. And these two ladies are probably some of the biggest volunteers in the city of Phoenix. And we're going to get a report today. And I think we're also going to honor a young man who's done a lot of work in Sunny Slope. And we thank everyone for being here. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Council members, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is Volunteer Month in April, so we're very excited to be celebrating all of the great things that volunteers do for the city of Phoenix. Currently, we have about 21 departments working on volunteer programs across the city, about 45 unique, robust programs that are doing everything you can imagine in terms of services for the community. We have about 40,000 participants each year. Each year we continue to rise in numbers of volunteers activated in the community, and that accounts to about 600,000 hours per year. So it's an astounding number, and that translates to about $8 to $10 million per year in what would be revenue to the city of Phoenix. And we like to say volunteers are actually priceless, and we have a great example. And Councilwoman, you mentioned Senator Kate Brophy-McGee is here with Jeannie Ann Sumner with a little announcement they'd like to make.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark and council members. It's such an honor to be here. Very quickly, the organization that I co-founded with my friend Andy Sobczak and our dear departed friend Earl Porter is called Sunny Slope Graffiti Fighters, and it was founded in honor of a former or a legendary neighborhood leader named Betty Bellinger. And Betty Bellinger, literally on her deathbed, willed her legacy to us of protecting the school, the neighborhood, and making sure that the after-school program at Desert View School stayed intact. So for the past 8 years, Andy and I have worked to form a partnership with the City of Phoenix Neighborhood Services, and we've been blessed by some wonderful, wonderful employees in that department who have helped us. And most importantly, adult leaders in the Sunny Slope area, but most importantly, the students at Sunny Slope High School, from originally the National Honor Society, and then it has progressed to the Key Club, and the volunteers that come forward every month to pick up trash, paint out graffiti, and fight blight in the neighborhoods surrounding the Sunny Slope High School. It's been wonderful. I will tell you that our group would not be successful without the kids. We can show up, we can do these things, but the kids are what give us our energy, our enthusiasm, and I can look and see that we are growing future leaders who need to understand what it takes to make a safe community. All that being said, during the course of my time in the legislature, I had the opportunity to meet and work with Jeannie Ann Sumner, and we reconnected in the past year, and she has brought resources to bear with all of her extensive neighborhood contacts and communications, and she has breathed new life into Sunny Slope Graffiti Fighters. And with that, I'd like to stand for questions if there are any, but I'd also like to introduce Ginny Ann Sumner. Ginny?
Wow, thank you, Senator. I had an introduction. Thank you. I appreciate that. Most of all, I do appreciate the opportunity, first of all, to come before the subcommittee. Also, I want you to also know that how much we appreciate Senator McGee and her group. They have made a tremendous difference, and it's because of groups like this that we're making more and more progress, not only on blight, but also on graffiti. We also have some other members here who are volunteers. We have the Phoenix Community Alliance representative. What? And working with the Alliance means that they are funding the graffiti hotline. So once a month they meet with the graffiti detectives to review cases and give out rewards for the information given to the hotline. I also believe we have other members of the Sunny Slope Graffiti Fighters here today, which is, yay! Thank you for coming. We appreciate that. Volunteerism is not easy. Someone asked me the other day if I was busy working on graffiti and other issues, if it's like a regular job, and my husband said, no, it's 24/7. Unfortunately, it can get that way sometimes, but what makes it all worthwhile are the volunteers you're out there, you're meeting, and all the hard work that they're doing. There's one in particular we'd like to honor today, and that is Vicente. Vicente, would you come up here, please? He is a member of Senator McGee's group and a member of their Key Club, isn't it?
Yes.
Key Club. In addition to their other activities, he's also responsible for helping with the graffiti and the blight. He is their leader. Now, it's not enough that they do it during school time or after school, but he organizes them to go out on weekends as well. So, Vicente, we want you to know how much we appreciate what you do. And I have a certificate for you in recognition of service and dedication to Senator Kate Brophy McGee's Sunny Slope Graffiti Fighters, presented to you, and it's on behalf of the Arizona Police Association and the Citizens Law Enforcement Anti-Graffiti Initiative. Cynthia, thank you for all you do. We do appreciate that. You're a wonderful community leader. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm glad I'm receiving this recognition, but I want you all to know that graffiti busing, instead of being more similar to work, has been more fun for me and my friends, and I hope to continue doing this even after I leave high school and for the years to come. Thank you.
Councilwoman, Madam Chair, if I might, Sunny Slope is part of my district, and it's just with a lot of pride that we have people out there on the weekends making sure that part of the community is kept clean. And it really warms my heart to see young people involved in making a difference in our community. And I want to thank everybody that is a part of the Sunny Slope Graffiti Busters. You guys do a great job. Thank you so much. And I can't see that. And thank you, Mr. Nanus. You've done a good job. You really represent youth. I mean, I'm proud to say you're a constituent. Thank you.
Councilman?
Yeah, if I might just say the same thing. I mean, neighborhoods are what it's all about here with the city of Phoenix. We're a collection of neighborhoods. We're one large neighborhood, but it comes down to strengthening our neighborhoods. And you see this downtown that we're creating, and you see the great things that we have in the city of Phoenix. It's all being built. It's all being brought together for the people. When it comes down to it, it's for the people who live in our neighborhoods, and all involved. Senator Brophy McGee, thank you for your leadership here on such a local issue, and for everything you're doing for us at the legislature. Ginny Ann, thank you so much for your leadership, especially on this topic, for everyone involved. Thank you for coming out. I especially want to thank Vicente Nunez, who I had just a few minutes to speak with prior to this meeting. You have a 16-year-old young man who could be doing anything with his time, and he's bettering our community, and he's leading by example. And I know that he has aspirations to definitely, as he said, go to college and then law school. And I know that he'll make us all very proud. I just met you, and I'm very proud of you. So congratulations on your acknowledgement, and this is good for our city.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you all for coming down and for the hard work you are doing. And you're all eligible for the City Volunteer Awards, which are coming up. So we can continue to recognize great work. And thank you to PCA, which is doing a big cleanup as well this weekend on Earth Day on the McDowell Road corridor. So if Sunny Slope is already graffiti-free, you can come join us on the McDowell Road corridor and expand. Lots of great work being done by volunteers, and I think we have opportunity to hear a little bit more about that.
Yes, that's really made it special. So I want to thank Senator Brophy McGee and Jeannie Ann Sumner and Vicente for making this really special. And that is really what this is all about. So we will move forward. And we did mention the numbers of volunteers, 40,000. You've met one really outstanding volunteer. And I agree, next year's volunteer awards, we have a nomination. So it's great to see this kind of dedication from young people. I wanted to mention briefly that the easiest way to volunteer at the City of Phoenix, just go to phoenix.gov and you'll click on volunteer. We have a really nice volunteer page that IT and PIO and Isaac from our office helped put together, and it looks really nice. It's powered. What's behind it is the power behind it, and that is the recruitment software that we have known as Samaritan, and that's recruitment and management. It is supercharged, and it's the easiest way to connect volunteers looking to do service in the city right to all of the programs I mentioned across 21 city departments. So we love that. It's also, over time, we've had that software since 2012. The Super Bowl used it when they were here in town on their own. The Final Four used it. We were able to directly link to those servers so we could just send and funnel volunteers over. About 3,500 volunteers did service during the Final Four. So it really showed the spirit of the City of Phoenix. One thing that's really special right now that we're working on at the City of Phoenix is our Cities of Service relationship. We are very proud to be a founding member of Cities of Service, started by Mayor Michael Bloomberg in 2009 in New York City, and it was really to engage volunteers to solve the most pressing issues facing our community. We signed on in 2009. In that time, in the last few years, we've had an investment of about $800,000 from Cities of Service. That is in actual funding, in technical support, and in the power of our AmeriCorps Vista members. We have 4 of them here today that are working on 2 different programs through Cities of Service. One is Love Your Block, and that is neighborhood revitalization, and it's a mini grant program. And to date, 3,000 residents have been engaged in this program, and we're in our 2nd year. That's a partnership with the City Manager's Office and Neighborhood Services Department, which is involved with so many of our volunteer initiatives, as you all know. And so that program is going really great. We have Alyssa Hagerbrandt and Anya Coleman, who are the 2 AmeriCorps Vistas for year 2. Our other program is Resilient Phoenix, and that is a program that is helping low-income communities become more resilient to extreme heat and to some monsoon damage that we've seen in our past. And that's really what initiated us to move forward with this grant. We're in year 2 right now. We have Nicholas Roosevelt and Willa Ko, and they are our 2 AmeriCorps Vistas for year 2. What's great about these 2 programs is how we connect to city priorities. And one example is these AmeriCorps Vistas worked on a tree shade project in the Triangle neighborhood of the City of Phoenix. And during that process, they worked with the resident volunteers to develop a toolkit on how to plant trees in your own community and help the city achieve its goal of a tree master shade plan that we're working on to increase the canopy of the City of Phoenix. So by the end of May, we will have more than 100 trees will have been planted through these volunteer initiatives, which we're really excited about. And we think it's just going to continue to escalate from there. One thing that is important with the Cities of Service initiative that we are working on is that they granted us a leadership grant last year. And that has been to supercharge what we're doing in terms of volunteering. And one of the key objectives was to create a citywide service plan, and I've worked with your offices over the last year to look at priorities. We've looked at the Plan Phoenix plan, we've looked at Reinvent Phoenix, all of the plans where residents have said their vision for what the city of Phoenix they hope it to be. So we used that, we did our own surveys, and we're putting together this plan. We have a advisory committee made up of community partners, and those partners are Helping Phoenix Neighborhoods, Hands on Greater Phoenix, Mountain Park Health Center, Keep Phoenix Beautiful, Valley of the Sun United Way. LISC is a new partner on board, and they're great. Terry, the CEO, has been fantastic. And our friends at Just Serve, which is a volunteer activation site where you can engage volunteers in your projects. JP Morgan Chase is the funder of this through Cities of Service. They're very helpful, not only on the national level, but locally, very involved. Their local CEO is very involved with the work that we're doing. He sits on our board as well. And now I will pass it over to a department that is doing a lot of this great work, one of our 21 departments I mentioned, Linda Dodd.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I am pleased to share with you, as part of the citywide volunteer coordination, Neighborhood Services has a significant impact in our communities, as you very well know. But I wanted to highlight a couple of our programs today. So overall, Neighborhood Services, we have worked with over 4,400 community volunteers in 2016. That includes a Blight Buster volunteer program that we reignited this past year, and we currently have about 35 members who are out there as leaders as well as participants in the Blight Buster volunteer program. So it's really wonderful to see groups like the Sunny Slope Graffiti Fighters out there doing that work, because without them we could not blanket the entire city the way we do. Our volunteers have participated in over 150 community cleanups, and that's 25,300 volunteer hours. That equates to, on average, almost $400,000 in savings. So that means $400,000 of the city of Phoenix was able to spend elsewhere other than trying to go out to the communities and clean up ourselves. So these two pictures, what I want to show you up there is Sandra Price on the top one, top left. She was participating in the Wipe It Out event. They coordinated 3 volunteer groups, and it also included the youth. And as you mentioned earlier with Vicente, it's really nice to see the youth participate because they are our future leaders. And on to the right, we love this picture. These are some really sassy women. These are women of distinction, and they were out there, they were cleaning, they had their nail polish on, and they had the bright pink shirt, so we love them. The second program that we have is a much needed one. It's a volunteer assistance program. This one is kind of near and dear to my heart. And Neighborhood Services has the code enforcement where we go out and identify blighted communities or blighted properties. And in some of those households, they are not able to care for themselves. And so this program, led by Lee Staten, he's our volunteer coordinator within Neighborhood Services. So he's fairly new. That position was created about 2 years ago. And he's done some phenomenal things. This one, you can see the gentleman in the wheelchair. These are folks who are either disabled or in low-income communities that are unable to fix up their properties or to come into compliance. So instead of having those code compliance issues sitting on our books for a long time and continuing to try and take them to court, we know that there's a certain population that cannot help themselves. And so Lee works with a very large volunteer group out in our community. They go out to these homes and they will do the repair work. You can see people are painting this house, they're making repairs to the fence line, and then the picture on the lower left, this is the woman that Lee was able to help. Lee is on the right. It's kind of hard to tell with this photo, but they painted her entire house. Oops, let me go back. So with the volunteer assistance program, so far we've helped 41 residents. That entailed 366 community volunteers and over 1,500 volunteer hours. And I am certain there are much more in there that we haven't been able to capture, but they do an excellent job, and I'm very thankful for the team that we're able to provide this assistance.
And Neighborhood Services, as we all know, is just instrumental in all of the great work that we're doing in volunteering. And we have Moses Gallegos here, Director of Human Services Department, and that is a department that has one of the largest numbers of volunteers activated last year, about 111,000 resident volunteers helping in our community. And right now it's tax time, and the volunteer income tax Earned Income Tax Credit Program is such a robust program. Need to give a shout out to Brizelda, who has done a fantastic job leading that program and helping folks recapture the money that is due to them, and that goes back into the economy, which is fantastic. And now I wanted to just take one moment and talk about our AmeriCorps Vista team. And many of them are sitting behind me right now. And this team, we currently have 9 members on our AmeriCorps Vista team, 19 part-time AmeriCorps members. It's our largest number we've ever had at the city. And they're doing amazing things. We have Natalia Brown in the District 8 office, and we have Jake Swanson in the District 5 office. So our council members know very well what the work is that they are doing. And of course, Councilwoman Stark is an alum, and she's been great with reaching out to our team and just kind of talking with them, and they're very proud to have a councilwoman who is involved in that way. And then Katie Gentry with the mayor's office, and I mentioned the 4 others from our Cities of Service programs, and then Bo Hawks Kebido with housing and working on the choice neighborhoods. So it's a great group we have here, and they're doing amazing things. And Isaac Bernal is our assistant in the volunteer office, an alum himself, and he's been fantastic, and he was funded through our Cities of Service grant. So we're very pleased with that. And Mayor's Day this year was a great success again, where it was mayors and elected officials celebrating national service. And we were honored that our team was asked to go down with Councilwoman Gallego down onto the ballpark field at the D-backs game. So that was a great opportunity. And Madam Chair, you mentioned that we have our big event coming up. It's coming up on April 26th, and we'll be honoring 30 volunteers. These were nominated through council offices, mayor's office, departments, and we have a really great group here again. And I believe all of our council members and mayor will be out there to celebrate at Steele Indian School Park, and we're really excited about that. It's a great event. You meet other amazing volunteers like Vicente, and it's just really inspiring. And again, I just wanted to mention, anyone looking to volunteer, just go to phoenix.gov, click on volunteer, and anything you're interested in, you'll find it, from aviation to parks, public service, public safety, education. We have everything. So thank you so much, Madam Chair, Councilman Valenzuela, Councilwoman Stark, Councilman Waring on the phone. Thank you very much for having us here.
Wonderful, thank you. And for Councilman Waring, you were in the presentation thanking your volunteers, a great picture as well. Thank you.
I'm sure it was great, except for having me in it. So I hope they chopped off my head or something like my mom used to do accidentally. So
You look
thank
tall. Thank you to Michael Hammett, our Chief Service Officer, for really taking our citywide volunteer program to another level. We really appreciate your leadership. We are trying to be as efficient as possible, and it's so wonderful when we can have volunteers doing great, great work that, as you mentioned, has millions of dollars of impact to the people of Phoenix, as well as making our city a better place to live, a friendlier city, and great experience for the volunteers. Any questions from?
I want to, Mo, thank you, and Linda, thank you. And I think you're absolutely right, Madam Chair. I want to especially thank you, Michael. Michael Hammond has done such a good job of making volunteering so easy in the city of Phoenix. It's such a large city. Sometimes, I mean, you run into people all the time who want to help. They love this city. We love our city. And in many large cities, it's hard to get involved. And I think here in the city of Phoenix, it's actually pretty easy. As you just mentioned, go to the website and click on volunteer, and there are opportunities everywhere. So thank you for making it easier, and I think you definitely are taking us to the next level on that.
Thank you, Councilman.
I remember when you worked for me, Michael. You've come a long way. I was a former Vista volunteer, and it really made me what I am. I think it's just one of the most important things you can do is volunteer and provide a service to the public. And thank you for what you do, Michael. It's just so impressive to see what you've done with the program. And again, thank everyone that volunteers for the city of Phoenix.
Thank you.
We do have a record number of AmeriCorps vistas serving at the city, which has been very important. They're great partners through the Corporation for National Community Service, but I did want to note that that is proposed for elimination in the president's budget. So we should continue to monitor what happens in that area. Very important to the city, I think. So
Thank you for your leadership, Madam Chair, and Councilwoman and Councilman Waring on the phone. Thank you very much.
happy Volunteer Service Month. We have a consent agenda for today's meeting, which includes important work that Councilman Valenzuela is leading on issues around AIDS. So I don't know if you had any comments on that or if we should move the agenda.
Things are moving great. I'm leading this effort along with Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Pastor. I know it's on the consent. If you're okay with it, I'll just make a motion to approve items 2 and 3.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. We have a quarterly update on homelessness, which has been a very important issue that we're working across departments on, and would encourage people to review the information in the council meeting packet. We will next go, we every month have been working on understanding the city's land owning holdings and making sure we manage them effectively, and want to get an update on the Neighborhood Services Department's land holdings, and welcome our Deputy Neighborhood Services Director, Aubrey Gonzalez.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Last month you heard from the City Manager's office regarding the total number of excess properties citywide. And so today we are here to provide the subcommittee an update regarding the Neighborhood Services Department's lots and our long-term plan to strategically dispose of excess real property. With me today is Jesse Garcia, Housing Development Manager, and our team oversees the acquisition, maintenance, and redevelopment of NSD lots. Here's an overview of where we are today. As reported last month, the total number of excess properties stood at 656. NSD's inventory of excess properties is 139, or 21% of that larger number. Currently, NSD has 109 properties under contract. These are the vacant single-family lots in South Phoenix Village near 24th Street and Broadway. In 2015, Council approved developer FSL Real Estate Services, and together we are building 121 new affordable single-family homes over the next 5 years. 12 parcels have been conveyed, which are reflected in the parcels disposed. 3 parcels are in the completed RFP, an open solicitation process for a cluster of parcels located at 3rd Avenue and McKinley. 14 parcels are pending RFP, 1 in the Roosevelt neighborhood on 5th Avenue and 13 in the Garfield neighborhood. In the parcels disposed, in addition to the 12 South Phoenix Village lots, 4 properties are located in downtown Phoenix, and the last NSP, Neighborhood Stabilization Program, move-in ready home was also disposed of. It has never been our intent to hold on to land long-term. The housing market crash and economic recession impacted opportunities for redevelopment. When the crash occurred, NSD was in negotiations and nearing contract execution to redevelop over 130 parcels, and negotiations failed. However, since 2014, NSD has disposed of 45% of our properties. In order to get to this current point of strategic disposition for the remaining 153 properties across these 4 council districts, it began with strategic acquisitions. As you can see by the map, the areas we focus on are smaller geographic areas where we can make an impact with our revitalization efforts and goals. Where we acquire real estate, we do so with a purpose and with a plan. The neighborhoods where we work are City Council adopted redevelopment areas and neighborhood initiative areas. Jesse will now discuss NSD's proposed strategic disposition plan and the requirements staff must adhere to.
Thank you. Thank you, Aubrey. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As you can, let's see here, the pie chart. As mentioned in the previous slide, we have 4 council districts that we have predominantly the number of the 153 properties. 45 of these properties sit in the target area B, which is in South Phoenix. 40 of the properties reside in the Isaac neighborhood. 30 properties, which 13 of them are in the process of RFP in the Garfield neighborhood. 17 in District 3 in the Village Center area, in and around the Dignity Honor Health, or John C. Lincoln, as we all know from the neighborhood. And then we have 10 remaining in the South Phoenix that are outside that target area B. So spread out between the number of excess lots, these are all designated redevelopment areas and neighborhood initiative areas. We wouldn't have purchased them if it's not been in those designated areas. Unfortunately, with the funds that we, fortunately or unfortunately, with the funds that we have received to purchase these properties, most of the properties have been acquired with federal dollars. The two main dollars is U.S. Housing and Urban Development Funds, which is HUD grant funds, which is CDBG, and then most recently with the Housing Crash Neighborhood Stabilization Funds, which the city received close to $139 million in that case. These funds' goals are basically to neighborhood revitalization and then also community economic development activities. And those are the two activities we have to use the funds for. We also have to follow state and local requirements. Redevelopment laws in the Title 36 require us to do to establish these city-approved plans, redevelopment plans, and also do a lot of community outreach and notification when we get ready to do the disposition of the properties. The other requirement is a community-based development organization that HUD requires. Whenever federal dollars are part of it, we have to actually, it could be a nonprofit, a for-profit community development organization that has to be set up with local members' boards to establish and redevelop these lands in these redevelopment areas. Right now, we only currently have 2 CBDOs in Phoenix right now, and we're hoping to grow more. Right now, we have 2 organizations. With that being said, we can go to our initial timeline for parcel dispositions by year. Now, I mentioned in the previous slide, 45% of our properties have already been under contract or disposed of since 2004. So we've been fast tracking prior to the review of these properties because we know it's important to the community. And then this initial timeline kind of lays out where we're at today, but it doesn't mean we cannot expedite these disposal of properties. So in 2017, we plan on releasing 18 lots, 2018, 20 lots, 2019, 31 lots, 2020, 40 lots, 2021, 15 lots, and 2022, 29 lots. Methods of disposition, and these are all going to be under review with our staff, our management, and also with law, and the best way to get the properties out on a quicker timeline. You know, we can do a call for interest, prepackaging the parcels through RFP, and then we can do multiple area RFPs all at one time. And then also, anything we can untangle via the redevelopment law, we can go to the open market with a multiple listing service. Some of these things we have to kind of detangle to kind of see what's the best method. But what we don't want to be is known, and we've heard this community recently, we don't want to be dumping properties and then diminishing values in neighborhoods. So we have to be very cognizant of when we do release these properties. So with that being said, we're happy to answer any questions. I can turn it back to Aubrey, but this is where we're at today. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk a little bit about the team that's managing this project, what expertise and background they offer.
Yes, so we have a current team of 5 staff. We are looking to fill some additional positions that we currently have vacant, and they all come with a real estate background in project management. Anything else you'd like to add, Jesse?
Well, I mean, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. Most of us are real estate agents. Have, you know, when she mentions the real estate background, and we just recently hired a new project manager assistant that has a commercial background because some of our properties are commercial related. We are seeking skill sets in urban planning because it does require a keen sense of urban planning. And I have a little bit of that on my background as a manager, but we're also gathering, and we also use internal departments and their resources to help us assist with the kind of the study of their properties, the research, demographics. There's a lot of finance involved with this, with the disposition of properties.
And so as someone who comes from the electric utility background, I'm always interested in utilities and making sure the infrastructure is ready for redevelopment. And since I'm sitting next to a recovering planning director, Can we talk about, do we have the right technical expertise on the sort of more infrastructure side to make sure these parcels are ready to go to?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, we are working with our sister departments. So prior to us disposing of any properties or putting them out there, an analysis is done. What is the current capacity of the infrastructure? And then that's also on the proposers for them to do that additional analysis to ensure that we have adequate infrastructure in place prior to development.
Any,
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, we do plan to return back in the fall with taking the summer months to do some of this analysis of the points you see up on the screen now, some alternatives to help expedite our disposition of these properties. So we'll be talking to our sister departments over the summer and then plan to return back to this subcommittee in the fall with an update.
I just have a quick question. First, I think that it was mentioned, I think the first thing you mentioned was that it was never our intent, the city's intent, to hold on to these properties. We're not a landlord. We shouldn't be a landlord. And it is the right thing to do to turn it back over to the private sector, do it responsibly, obviously. And I didn't see a map. I know that where most of these properties are in those council districts, I actually appreciate the fact that 72 are in your district, Madam Chair.
yes.
And the reason I appreciate it is because of your, I know you'll help maximize, with your leadership. I know that you're going to help maximize the opportunities in South Phoenix. It's an important place for all of us. But all of those council districts, I know, you have Councilwoman Stark, Vice Mayor Pastor, Councilman Nowakowski. But I'm assuming, because I can't see it clearly in the map, but none of those properties are on the proposed light rail line on the South Central corridor. Is that correct?
2 or 3 of them sit on Central and Broadway.
My only point of caution is we don't want to put ourselves in a position to release those parcels only to later put ourselves in a position to have to buy them back for 2 or 3 times of what we're selling them for. That's a really important project for our city. I know that I'm echoing your sentiment, Madam Chair, being that you're leading the charge there. But that was my concern with some of the Barrister building in downtown. And we made some arrangements there that we wouldn't be putting ourselves in a position to have to rebuy these parcels. But that would be my only point of caution. As we start releasing these properties, we want to just, think to the future a bit and have some vision, which I know that especially our city staff has, and my colleagues on the council as well. But let's just think ahead a little bit and just, as we're releasing these parcels, we do it responsibly and we're doing it with a future in mind. We have some major infrastructure coming that is light rail, and we just have to think about that as well. And I'm sure you're doing that.
Absolutely.
We also have parcels on 7th Street area, which is on the new future, perhaps downtown circulator. So it's not just light rail, but a lot of parcels that are in strategically important locations.
And we have a couple near one of our transfer stations in District 3 that would allow us to possibly, and we work with the transit department and let them know regards to our land availability around the transit center. So for opportunities for future expansion. So we're any opportunity to maximize what is going on there already, we're definitely talking to our department, other departments right now.
And you touched on this, but could you give a little bit more detail about what these properties look like when we acquired them, and did the neighborhood want us to acquire them?
Yes, I'll give the great example of the one of the larger parcels that we own of the 153 of the properties we're looking at. It was a 52 unit multifamily. It had over a 10-year period. It had 6,000 police calls of service, and it had it was a slum and blight top 10 property. And when the housing foreclosure issue came up, in 2007, 2008, this property went into foreclosure, and we were able to pick it up with the Neighborhood Stabilization Fund. And the neighborhood has been singing our joys ever since as relates to that particular property. But every property we purchase, and I could tell you a story. We also have an old former Hells Angels clubhouse that we have acquired over the years. We have a story almost about every single property and the issues and the challenges and troubles that they have caused in our neighborhoods. So when we come in for the slum and blight removal program, I mean, it's basically a saving grace in regards to getting rid of what was there formerly, drug houses and others. So to give you an example.
And there are certainly, you talked about, there's concerns about the rate at which the city's putting them on the market, but we also have areas like we've heard at 24th Street and Broadway, the community thinks it may increase property values as we.
Yes, absolutely, and we just did some analysis just within the week, and we haven't had the opportunity to brief you on it, but the 85040 code, 85040 zip code, which District 8 sits in, and where we're building right now is in what they consider a frenzy market. That frenzy market means is when there's more houses under contract than there are houses available. And that's good news for 85040, which then we have some larger parcels that maybe at some point a retailer would come in and maybe offer some up or an opportunity to propose on our larger piece of land, because we need rooftops first. And when housing starts getting built like we are on 85040, then that gives us an opportunity to maybe release some of those other commercial lots that we could add to the city coffers in regards to retail tax. So we're excited.
One of the things I do think is a great opportunity for us at the city is to work across departments even more than we have. So we now have someone who's a retail specialist in community and economic development. That's a great resource. We also have a lot more expertise and more consultants who can help us with things like utilities, and that I think in Target Area B has been a challenge. So as we go across departments, making sure that we are ready and that the infrastructure isn't what holding us back. If we make a decision because of neighborhood input, that's different. But if we really have the opportunity to hit the ground running when the market conditions are right, we should make sure we're on the technical side.
I can tell you in neighborhood services, there's not a lot of egos. I mean, our mission is to revitalize the neighborhoods where we currently own land in. And whether it's another city department, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's another community member, we're always seeking advice or information or data to help us steer us in the right direction. So we continue and will continue to do that. So.
And same with like streets department is investing in a lot of sidewalks and upgrades. We can do that at the same time as we're in many of the same neighborhoods where we're working on the neighborhood services side. So lots of great opportunities for us to. Wonderful. We will look forward to hearing it back in fall.
Thank you.
And looking forward, Garfield is going to council?
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So
Yes,
it's a big week for
neighborhood service,
neighborhood
yes, and
service.
excess properties, definitely.
Excellent. We'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow then. Thank you. Mentioned earlier that April is a big month for this subcommittee, and it is Fair Housing Month, so we will welcome Don Logan, our Equal Opportunity Director, to kick off a presentation for us on Fair Housing Month.
Madam Chair, members of the Council Subcommittee, thank you. Good morning. Joining me this morning at the table is our Director of Housing, Ms. Cindy Stadler, and Deputy Director, Ms. Linda Dodd. There's a lot going on this month, Fair Housing included. So with that, let me reiterate that the month of, I'm having trouble communicating. I got sinuses. I'm not the only one in the room.
Something else that happens in April, allergy month.
Lived here all my life and never had a problem with sinuses until I get to a certain age, so we won't go there. The month of April is nationally recognized as Fair Housing Month. Our purpose in presenting today is to share with the Council Subcommittee the City of Phoenix Fair Housing Initiative. Our approach is to speak on the collaboration between departments that represent the city's fair housing team, provide a status update of fair housing, a snapshot of housing discrimination complaints, community outreach efforts, and fair housing events. Looks like I'm having technical difficulties here. Real difficulties. Doesn't seem to want to advance here. Thank you. Again, Fair Housing Team is comprised of members from Equal Opportunity Department, Housing Department, and Neighborhood Services. When we think of fair housing, it's pretty obvious that fair housing complaints is an issue that is near and dear to members of the community. Primary responsibility for addressing these issues lies with the Equal Opportunity Department. And we often, when we think of fair housing complaints, we think of race and gender issues. The news that I shared with you this morning is that the number one issue that is evolving, not only here in Phoenix, but across the country, is issues of disabilities, ADA. This is the number one complaint that we're seeing in fiscal year 2015-16. Should also note that EOD staff addressed 151 housing complaint intakes. Intakes is where we sit down and we talk with individuals who are of the perception that they may have been discriminated against. And of those 151 intakes, there were a total of 44 that evolved into formal investigations. The point in sharing this information is that clearly housing complaints are the most underreported complaints that we deal with in the total context of all discrimination types of complaints. For this reason, we feel that it's very important that we have community outreach and engage in community outreach. And the number of areas where we extend ourselves, there are a host of educational presentations and workshops that are done by Equal Opportunity Housing and the Neighborhood Services Department. There are quarterly landlord-tenant clinics. I'm going to ask Linda Dodd to speak to the details of that program.
For example, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, tomorrow we have the Coffee with the Counselor. It's going to be held at the Desert West Community Center. We hold those types of events every quarter so that, you know, we can help our landlords and tenants one-on-one when they come to our offices for assistance. But we really do like to go out to the community and do broad-based community outreach so that we can educate a larger population. And we have statistical records of where we are receiving the most issues, and it happens to be the belly of the city. It should be no surprise. And so what we do is we've been targeting not only providing clinics in those particular areas, but again, the youth. If you think about families who are not English speaking, one of the ways to outreach is through the children. So if we educate the children on what is allowable with the Landlord-Tenant Act, then they will take that information to their families and then they will be able to come to our office. They will also realize that we offer those services in Spanish. 2 of our counselors are Spanish speaking, so it's a really good way to do that. So our focused effort with the school districts this year is Isaac, Cartwright, and Roosevelt school districts.
And Madam Chair, we also want to talk about the Section 8 housing, where this past year we, for the first time in the last 20 plus years, we reopened the Section 8 housing, and Housing Director Cindy Stotler is going to speak to that.
Thank you, Don. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, yes, we did open up the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waitlist this year, 27,000 applicants. So there is a high demand for Section 8 housing. At any one time, we have about 5,600 voucher holders out there interacting with landlords, either as a tenant or searching for a place to live. So we hold quarterly Section 8 landlord classes for landlords that are current landlords and also potential landlords to educate them on the program, to help them work with the program and understand the program and make it easy for them as much as possible, because we want more landlords to participate in the program, especially when the market rent is so high right now. The market's very good for renters right now, so our Section 8 voucher holders have a hard time finding places to live. So we want to encourage the landlords. So that's what we do with these classes. We also want them to be very good landlords. So we educate them on fair housing law, on landlord-tenant act. We also educate them on their HOA responsibilities if they're renting homes and what the landlord responsibilities are in that situation. So we do a lot in these classes. We hold them 4 times a year. And the last one was last week on April 13th at the Travis Williams Family Service Center. In honor of Fair Housing Month, we made it about fair housing and landlord-tenant law, and then threw in some HOA and landlord compliance responsibilities. So we will continue to do that and try to attract Section 8 landlords. Our classes are posted on our website, phoenix.gov/housing. If any landlords are interested, please participate.
And the the Equal Opportunity Department has had staff representation at the Community College Fair event, the LGBTQ Migrant Healthcare Fair event, as well as the Teach for America Canvassing Project. All of these are community initiatives where our presence was important in terms of educating attendees on the value of and the importance of having knowledge about where to file a complaint, who to talk to, what are your rights, and what's the process. So we feel that we're making significant gains in terms of our community outreach efforts. In terms of the month of April, in terms of dealing with sharing fair housing events, the ASU Race and Democracy Lecture, which was held on April 1st at Pilgrim Rest Church, garnered a huge, and I don't know what the numbers are, but it's probably the largest number of gathering that I've seen at Pilgrim Rest, and I frequent that church on a regular basis. The cities, they also hosted a community resource fair where city departments participated, included each of the departments here today. We also want to talk about the Arizona Fair Housing Symposium. The 18th annual Fair Housing Symposium was held on April 7th at Ability 360, where the theme was Yes in My Backyard. Guest speakers and panel members discussed the most recent HUD regulations concerning criminal backgrounds, felonies, violence against women, and equal access. Featured guests, EOD staff, investigative staff have served as featured guests on radio shows, both in English and Spanish-speaking listeners, and worked with the communication staff to address housing issues related to the Phoenix area. And finally, 33 Suda Lotto event in partnership with Univision, EOD co-sponsored this event, which highlights fair housing, landlord and tenant, and housing department open door program. The event will begin the week of April 17th with the interviews recorded by Univision for subsequent viewing at the April 19th event. So that being said, that concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that the subcommittee may have.
Thank you for that great presentation. We have some nonprofit partners who help us do fair housing education. Could we speak a little bit about the work that they do?
The group that helps us with the outreach, Madam Chair, members of the committee, LULAC helps us with outreach in terms of extending and creating community events to again, educate city residents on the various opportunities, resources, again, to reinforce where if they want to file a complaint, to give them some sense of comfort and knowing that their complaint will be dealt with objectively and that the city of Phoenix is serious about fair housing practices.
Wonderful. We have great partners in the nonprofit community. It's worth recognizing those partnerships this month as well. Any questions from my colleagues? Wonderful. Well, thank you. And
if I could just again, thank you. I want to thank Mr. Ball. I'm a big fan of Bolton. We worked together out in Glendale, and we were fortunate to bring him to Phoenix. But I actually served on his committee in trying to make that city a more diverse workforce, more diverse city. So I've always been a big fan, and seeing you here in the city of Phoenix and all the things that you're doing, I'm not surprised at all, but certainly appreciative. I think you're an amazing individual, so thank you for your leadership.
wonderful. Thank you all. Happy Fair Housing Month to everyone. Earth Day only gets a day, but maybe we can make it Earth Month in the city of Phoenix. So our grand finale presentation in our big month of April is coming from our Chief Sustainability Officer, Mark Hartman.
Good morning, welcome, Madam Chair, and other members of council. Yes, celebrating Earth Day and actually Earth Week here at Phoenix, and in many cases Earth Month. Did want to have this vignette to kind of describe briefly of, it's really quite remarkable what's happening globally. The really awareness, I think back in, quite a number of years ago, it was very much, oh, you just throw stuff away. And when really we discovered there's no way, as we start walking in wilderness areas and enjoying our places, you go, I don't want this stuff garbage here, and recognizing, it's really important. And now globally, earthday.org takes in reports from cities and countries, 195 countries, which is every country on the planet has an Earth Day event somewhere within their borders. And are over 1 billion people at an Earth Day event or Earth Week event. And so no different here in Phoenix as well. I did want to give a brief history of back, I guess the Earth Day birthday was April 22nd, 1970. And originally from Gaylord Nelson, was a U.S. Senator, a congressman, and very much kind of echoed that what was coming from the public at that time of just recognizing the real importance of celebrating our home. And it's a great quote from him, the ultimate test of a man's conscience, maybe his willingness to sacrifice something for today, for future generations whose words of thanks will not be heard. And so really, and I think very much the role of the city as well, is actually to be thinking about our long-term planning for the future, really in addition to, it's not just about today's voters, but even future generations and future residents. So looking at certain events happening here in the city, there's actually 15 events that I'm aware of that are happening, including something at the Phoenix Zoo and little educational things, I guess Earth Day with Animals, I guess the event. This one here, Keep Phoenix Beautiful, is on its 8th year. Certainly a very, at Steelhead Indian School Park, is from 11 to 4. There'll be over 50 booths and music. And one thing we're asking of all the vendors who are coming here, requiring of all the vendors, we're going to have inspectors making sure, is that everything that's brought there on site needs to be either recyclable or compostable. So there'll be no waste at all, a zero waste event at that particular event. But I left out one important thing on that side. I should have had fun there as well. So it should be a very fun event. And then also, for the first time this year, will be the Phoenix March for Science. So this happens many cities, over 500 communities globally now, the March for Science. The big one at Washington, D.C. Has over 400,000 people coming out. Remarkable. I should go there someday. It sounds remarkable. But here, they're actually expecting over 5,000 people. Quite a number of action on Facebook, on their Facebook site. And so expecting over 5,000 people here. Just right across the street here from City Hall, Cesar Chavez Memorial Plaza, and really be also a number of very exciting things for people to come and attend. So really wanted to highlight that, Earth Day is really something significant happening around the globe, that and echoing. And one last personal comment, not being original Phoenician, but coming here, one thing people kind of ask is, how are we like other communities? Are we different than other communities when it comes to things like environmental? And I would actually, one of my strong observations is that there is a very significant connection with our natural environment, the desert environment here, that you don't see in other cities. No one else identifies with our ecosystem in other cities, but here people very much live and breathe. They say we live in a desert. All the logos of the businesses have cactuses on them. We just really think about and are naturally resilient and have just grown up and see ourselves and know and very much experience living in a desert. And so people here very much, I would say, have a very strong connection with the place they live and the connection. So wanted to celebrate. So remind everyone, Earth Day this Saturday, and also at City Hall this week. Every day we have something from 11 till 1. Different departments featuring different things they're doing. And with entering the finale on Friday with the Recycle Madness and announcing the winning floor for who's recycled the most. It's been very exciting seeing all the departments, how excited all employees have been about trying to really raise awareness of importance of recycling here, even at City Hall, leading by example. So come out for that exciting announcement at noon on Friday. So thank you very much.
Fabulous, thank you. And it's a busy week at City Hall with Bike to Work Day. Our former member of this, former chair of this subcommittee had a great piece in the Arizona Republic this morning about Bike to Work Day. So lots going on. We're going to have bicycle safety fairs this weekend, several cleanups, in addition to all the great things happening at City Hall. So it really is a robust celebration in the city of Phoenix. Thank you. Mark? That is our final agenda item. Turn to my colleagues for any agenda items that they would like to see on future subcommittees.
Madam Chair, I don't know if this is really our subcommittee, but I guess it has a little bit to do with blight. And this is, we still have a lot of shopping centers that remain vacant, and I'm curious in how we're addressing that, and because that does lead to blight and sometimes criminal activities, and so I'm curious as to what strategies the city's looking at to address the issue of these vacancies.
That'd be wonderful, and we have, starting in January, we had a new person addressing that, so that
Right.
would be a great opportunity to get an update. Thank you, I think that would be a wonderful presentation. Councilman?
I have nothing at this time.
Wonderful. With that, we have no cards from the public, so we will adjourn.